Hello and welcome to the London Legal Podcast, presented by Hodge, Jones and Allen Solicitors.
We are delighted to present another of our In Conversation interviews. This time, Anne Sanders, partner in our personal injury team, is chatting with Deborah Bent, Chief Executive of the Limbless Association, and David Rose, Chair of Trustees, a national charity supporting lives beyond limb loss. The wonderful staff and volunteers working for the association believe no amputee need cope alone.
Welcome, Debbie and David, and congratulations to the Limbless Association on reaching its 40th anniversary. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I think a good place to start would be to hear from you about how and why was the Limbless Association formed in 1983?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The charity, as we know it today, owes its beginnings to our sister charity, Blesma, which is the British Limbless Servicemen's Association. One of their leading lights, a guy who had the vision to see into the future, Sam Gallop, an ex-RAF Second World War fighter pilot who lost both his legs following a crash. He saw the value of the services that were available to veterans and wanted to provide some sort of comparable service to the civilian limb loss, limb difference community in the UK. And Sam created an organisation which was first entitled the National Association of Limbless Disabled, and from that foundation we have built on and above to where we are today.
And the charity originally evolved as a campaigning and lobbying organisation, so it wasn't necessarily providing services, it was there to provide support, but also people like Sam Gallop lobbied and campaigned in Parliament for the betterment of services and the improvement of services for the limbless, the civilian limb loss population. And obviously we're very successful in that, and I think, for going down the line, that some of the services, the prosthetic services that are available today, the improvement in those prosthetic services have come about because of those guys back then. Would you say, David?
Yes, and the advocacy that people like Sam achieved did change the whole operating service delivery environment. I can explain further about my own personal experience, but the first limb I had in the back end of the 1970s was Second World War issue, with all the crudity and impracticality that implies. And there is never a good time to lose an upper or lower limb, but what has happened in the intervening 40 years is that amputees are now better served than they have ever been at any time, and in part it's people like Sam Gallop that we have to be thankful for that.
And I also think that that the longevity of the charity, as you say, it's 40 years, I think is a testament to all the people that have gone before, and the fact that there is still a need for a support charity to support the civilian population. And the very beginnings in terms of that campaigning and lobbying, although I would say the charity today is not a campaigning and lobbying organisation as such, but we do, with our voice at national strategic kind of level, we're still there trying to campaign for whatever we identify that our members, our service users need. Yeah. And that work continues. Yeah.
Well, that's a fantastic insight. And one of the questions I was going to ask was, how the Limbless Association's work has evolved over the past 40 years. And I think you may have already touched on that.
It's evolved to meet the need, basically. So everything we do throughout that cycle of evolution for the charity is about identifying what that need is. And we're currently a charity that's got over 2,000 members, and that's growing significantly. Actually, we're really seeing a spike in membership because people want to belong to that community, a community that understands, that can represent them, And so, but that is actually part, representation is actually continues to be part of our work. And we always talk about, our membership, while they're there to, it's a mutual relationship, mutually respectful relationship, but we want to represent them, but equally then by joining the Limbless Association, there is that national collective voice as well, and that's what we're looking to grow. And we, one of the bodies that we sit on is the Rehabilitation Disability CRG, of which David is now a member. So that work that Sam started back then still continues through various work streams that we take on. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. And David, you touched on your own experience. Would you like to share your personal story?
Yes. I was a 23-year-old, super fit, aspiring professional cricketer, but didn't quite make the grade. But sport was my life. I was working in the water industry and riding my motorcycle home from work in East London on a September in 1979. I unfortunately met a gentleman from France who had got lost and decided to drive on the French side of the road in East Ham. And even more unfortunately, we met on a sharp bend. I think I had a split second to avoid a head-on, but all I did was expose the right side of my body as I was sat on my motorcycle, and the damage was done. I was very lucky to survive, but obviously my right leg didn't. I experienced something called traumatic amnesia, which meant that I have no recollection of actually what happened, because apparently I was conscious at the time. But the drugs that they used to fill you with in those days kept me on a certain level, and I didn't really appreciate what had happened for quite a while afterwards. But the realization that my life had changed in an instant through severe trauma, limb loss, was difficult to cope with. But similarly, I was lucky. My family, my friends, my employer even at the time, everybody rallied round to support me, and I somehow got through those early, most challenging stages of the initial rehabilitation process. Because 1979, this was 4 years before the Limbless Association was established, so I didn't know any other people living with limb loss like myself. I went back to play cricket the next summer, and the amputees didn't play cricket. They didn't do the whole Paralympic sports industry didn't exist even such a short while ago. I had to make it up as I went along, and I had the strength and the physical strength and the emotional determination to meet those challenges. What I then appreciate a few years down the line, when I met Sam and saw the work that he was his vision for the future, I realised there were a lot of people that were nothing like as fortunate as I had been. And I use the term fortunate advisedly. I was fortunate to live beyond the severe trauma limb loss that changed my life. And it's about the most significant thing that can happen to you as an individual. And many people find that challenge almost too much. And that's where the charities like the Limbless Association and Blesma step in and provide the help that people need, that vital assistance at the time that they need it. And I count myself as lucky on many, many different levels, but the chance that I've got to give something back through the work of this charity, it fills me with as much enthusiasm and I would even say passion today as it did when I first came on board almost 40 years ago.
Thank you, David, for sharing that personal story with us. And one thing that's brought to my mind is your current peer support programme and how that may have made a difference to you if that was available at the time.
Goodness, it would have been incredible. As I mentioned earlier, the prosthetic limbs that were available in the late 1970s into the early 80s were crude, basic items. Second World War issue. They were not easy to use. They were uncomfortable. They were heavy. I, for example, had a metal socket where I fitted what's left of my right leg into it. Playing cricket, on a number of occasions, although you hold a bat, you're supposed to hit the ball. Occasionally, I would miss. The ball would hit my leg and dent it. I would have to go back to the limb centre on a Monday morning sheepishly and get them to panel beat the dents out so that I could wear it again. There was the people at my centre thought it was fantastic. They didn't mind at all. But I could have done with talking to somebody who said, well, how do you get back into sport? How do you get back into the workplace? How do you learn to drive? In those days, the DVLC, as it was then called, revoked all your licences. The system that we have today of medical assessments hadn't evolved, and you simply lost all your driving licences. You had to start again. Advice and support in that area, practical issues that represent the daily challenges of living with upper or lower limb loss are there. They're every day, and the need sometimes for just practical help, support and guidance is so important.
Thank you. And when does an individual, possibly a difficult question, but when, in your experience, does an individual first come to the Limbless Association?
Yeah, it's an interesting question actually, because there are various points of entry. So we get contacted for people pre-amputation. For those that are having elective surgery. Sometimes when their surgery is in 2 days' time, and all of a sudden they're trying to piece all the pieces of the jigsaw together to have an idea of what life is going to look like on the other side. Post-amputation, in those early days, it tends to be family members, because while the loved one is in hospital, they're looking to again find those jigsaw pieces and try and put everything together for when their loved one gets discharged. And then there's another entry point when people go to the limb fitting centre, because all of a sudden they've come through that the critical care, and then they're looking for answers and information around what to expect in the rehab process, because I think managing expectations is one of the most difficult things. I mean, there is no doubt, like David talked about the Paralympics, we very much champion lives beyond limb loss. We're doing the superhero trial Saturday, and we've got teams doing that. We do our annual O2 climb, but ultimately in those early days, early months, the challenges are huge, and it's just overwhelming, as I think David mentioned again. And for a lot of people, when you become an amputee, most people have never they've never talked to an amputee. They don't know what being an amputee is. So all of a sudden they're trying to put all of that information together themselves. And when they find the LA, we can do that for them. We can start, plotting, the kind of knowledge base that they need to be able to navigate what is essentially quite a complex journey to rehabilitate well, to get those really good outcomes and move forward with your life. Even if that's being able to take the grandchildren to the park, or it's doing the superhero trial, whatever that is, it's about making sure you've got the building blocks of your rehab in place for what is right for you. Information is power. And one of the things when we've done surveys, the lack of information at the point of becoming an amputee there is a lack of it basically, and that is one of the things that's highlighted through our members, through our service users.
Debbie, what's the best way for someone to contact the Limbless Association?
So people can contact us, they can have a look at our website. We've got a wealth of information on there, and our helpline's on there. So our helpline number is 0800 644 0185, and we've also got a dedicated email address, and that's support@limbless-association.org. Yeah, we strongly recommend people do give us a call, whatever their query. No query is too small, no situation is too great. I mean, we are a signposter as well, so we're quite resourceful. Our team are quite resourceful in terms of finding out the information that people might need, because when people are in quite a vulnerable and distressed situation, they just need that guidance and support. So we're there for people, we're there for their families. We have family peer mentoring as well, so it's not just for amputees, it's also the family members as well. So it's really important that people give us a call.
And I would conclude by saying that the range of our services are not restricted. We recognise the reality that limb loss, upper or lower limbs, the impact on the individual is unique. The challenges that the individual will face in their rehabilitation, their adjustment to this different life is totally unique for each person. We recognise that, and we do our best to make sure the services we provide will meet the individual's unique needs.
Thank you, David and Debbie, for speaking with us today. And I just want to congratulate you again on your 40th anniversary, and good luck for the next 40 years and more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The London Legal Podcast.